Good evening. Welcome to tonight's live podcast of Not Dead Yet. I welcome everybody who's here, everybody who's listening on Facebook, YouTube, and I'm happy to have you join us. We're going to be talking about relationships matter. I have to start tonight's broadcast by talking about tonight's podcast. We're talking about a relationship that mattered, not a very good relationship, actually a bad relationship. Bad relationships matter too. We talk about Israel and Palestine. This is a relationship that goes back to biblical times. It's a bad relationship. The relationship that this weekend ended up in hundreds and hundreds of people dying, being kidnapped and abducted by monsters. To the people of Israel, we send our prayers, our thoughts, our disgust and our horror at what happened, our support, our unending support. Bad relationships follow you through eons, through generations, perhaps, like they did, and they showed us this weekend. Bad relationships are toxic. There are good relationships, there are bad relationships, there are real relationships, there are fake relationships. And there are relationships that especially as we get older, they influence our lives forever. And we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about the relationships that matter most to us, especially as we have reached this point in our adulthood where we need safety, we need security, we need trust, and we need comfort. We spoke about during the last broadcast about how at this time in our life, we're looking for happy. And so I think what we need and what we look for in relationships differ, and it's changed as we've reached this point in our life. We may not be looking for that thrill anymore, or maybe we are. I think we still are looking for thrills and we still are looking for adventures. And that's kind of the whole reason I started this podcast, right? Is that we're not dead yet. And so we're still looking for those things. But relationships matter because we're looking maybe for different things in our relationships, right? So let's talk about the different kinds of relationships that we have in our lives now. We have relationships in our lives, like I have a relationship with my dog. Let's talk about my relationship with my dog. My dog is not an ordinary dog. Okay, I'll be real. I have a very special dog. My dog is Charlie Backstage. Charlie Backstage turns 12 years old this week, actually. He is, I work from home, so it's me and him all day long, and he is my constant companion. It's unconditional love. Okay, I never have to question it. He is my support. He is my companion. He follows me around all day long. If I could travel with him all the time, I would. He is, he loves me unconditionally. That is a support mechanism I have with me all the time. It is a love I can count on. He has seen me through the bad times, through the good times. He drives me crazy. He has, interrupted some relationships. He has caused some problems in some other relationships. But my relationship with my dog is solid. I can count on it. It's there all the time. That's a real relationship. And it's full of nothing but love. There are also some not so real relationships. There are some fake relationships. What's a fake relationship? A fake relationship is like, okay, my relationship with the IRS. It's a relationship. I have to pay them taxes. So it's a give and take relationship. They take and I give, I guess. A relationship, let's say you have somebody living next to you, right? And they're nasty. You don't really like them, but it's a relationship you have with them because you share a wall, or maybe you share some common areas, or you share a driveway or a parking lot. That's a fake relationship, though. It's a relationship out of necessity. Or maybe even with your employer, right? They pay you, you work for them, or you bill them, or whatever, but it's a fake relationship. It's one out of necessity. It's not a real relationship. It's one out of necessity. And then there are bad relationships, right? There are relationships you have that can be bad, that can be toxic. There are relationships, I've had some really bad relationships. Okay, I've had bad relationships in my life. And the bad relationships sometimes help turn you into who you are right now today too. Okay, so look, I was in a bad marriage. I was, and I don't know, there could be people who are listening to me right now who are very aware of my bad marriage. It was with a man who didn't treat me so well. It was a man who didn't treat a whole lot of people so well. He had a good heart, clearly, or else I wouldn't have married him. He was a brilliant man, a creative man, but it was a bad marriage. And he gave me a beautiful son. And I was with him for a lot of years, through a lot of formative years, but it was a really bad marriage. And, but it helped turn me into who I am because in certain ways it made me stronger and it made me more sure of myself, and it put me on to the next step in my life. And as toxic as it was a part of who I am today. So even bad relationships matter because they are a part of the formula that turns you into who you eventually are. So there are bad relationships, there are good relationships, there are real relationships, there are fake relationships. So what makes a relationship a good relationship? What makes a relationship a better relationship? What makes a relationship a necessary relationship? So a good relationship is one that doesn't take away from your shine. That a good relationship is a relationship that makes you want to accomplish even more, or doesn't diminish who you are, doesn't take away from the things that you can achieve in your life, doesn't make you feel less than who you are. Um, we talked about, like I said, last podcast, the need at this stage in your life to find happy, or else it kind of doesn't make any sense. So a good relationship is one that doesn't deviate from that path, that doesn't take you off course, that doesn't make you question your need to find happy. A good relationship isn't toxic. A good relationship isn't exhausting. A good relationship just makes you feel whole. It provides a safety place for you. A good relationship is one where when it gets really tough, they don't walk away. So I was in a bad relationship. Okay. Before, a number of years ago, I was involved with a man who was abusive. And there was a lot of my friends who walked away because they couldn't deal with how this man was treating me, and it was so toxic, and everything around me turned black and gray and horrible, and I was in a bad place, and a lot of people around me, they couldn't handle that. They didn't know what to say to me. They didn't know. Every time I was crying or in a blue place, I would call them. There was nothing more to say. There was nothing more they could do, because sometimes when you're in a relationship like that, you can't get away. And people got tired of telling me to, well, just leave, just leave. And sometimes you can't. And people got tired of telling me the same thing. So they just got tired of talking to me. And it was the people who stuck with me. It was the people who didn't walk away. Those are good relationships. Those are the people who stuck with me. Those are the people who are still my friends. Those are the people who are strong. Those are the safety nets that you need. Those are the safe places. That makes a good relationship. There are people in my life today that have been in my life for years and years and years. And you know what? Relationships change. They evolve over time. And that's good too, because we've evolved over time, and relationships matter because as we change, relationships change, and that's okay. Relationships matter because we matter. You matter. As we go through life and as our goals change, as our objectives change, our relationships change. You don't want the person who's going to disappear on you. You don't want the person who's going to just not know what to say. It's okay. Sometimes silence is okay. Sometimes all you just need to know is that even if you don't talk to a person in months, years even, that when you call them, they're going to be there to listen. There are people who I may not talk to in years or weeks or months, and I just know that if I were to reach for that call or reach for the phone, they'll be there. There are people that I met who are friends, and over time we may have dated, or we may have gone out, or we may have broken apart, and we can still go back and we'll start talking again, and we'll always be friends because I still care and I still love them, and we're going to grow old together because we had that kind of past and that history, and it's a safety place. It's a trust that I have with that person that will never go away. And that relationship matters to me. It forms a part of who I am. And that's because relationships matter. Look, even in politics, and I was talking about this with a friend over this past weekend, relationships matter. When I told you last podcast, I spent some time in Washington doing lobbying. All of politics is about relationships. Those relationships matter. Your relationship with a congressman, that's a relationship that's fake. I mean, you don't really know that person, but it matters because look, when they're out there trying to balance a budget, they're representing their constituency because they want to be reelected. That relationship matters to them. Your relationship with your parents matters. It's amazing to me how many people our age, middle age plus, still want the approval of their parents, of their mother, right? What my mother thinks about me and what I'm doing still matters to me, which is amazing to me because I'm old. I shouldn't care what she still thinks about me, but I do. And even if sometimes that relationship isn't the healthiest for me, it may not be the most supportive of me, it still matters to me because it's still part of who I am. She's still a part of who I am. So it still matters to me. So sometimes, again, even the bad relationships, the non-supportive relationship, they matter. They're still good because they're part of who you are. But you know what? The relationship that matters most, the relationship that matters most is your relationship with yourself. So a friend of mine forwarded me a post that I think he got from somebody he knew, and it was talking about her relationship with her body, with herself. And women, I think in particular, have a very strange relationship with themselves and with their bodies. And especially as we get older, we get very critical of our bodies. And sometimes for young women too, it's very hard for them to form a very positive relationship with their body. And that's a shame because we get very critical and we tend to divide our soul and our spirit from our physical selves. And but our body, as this post said, houses our soul and houses our spirit. And we tend to put too much of a priority on how we look. And that's a shame because personally, I do. I have a very bad relationship with my body and myself and my physicality and food. I have a horrible relationship with food. But that's a relationship that matters because it tends to drive a lot of my other relationships. If you have a bad relationship with your physical self, then it's going to feed into your relationship with other people because you're aware of how you look and it's going to be aware of your physical relationship with others. And in my promos for tonight's podcast, I said, we can talk about, your physical relationship with others and how that changes as you hit middle age plus. And it does. Your body changes as you hit middle age. You may not feel as beautiful or as pretty or as handsome or as sexy as you once did. And so that may change your relationships, the nature of your relationships. You may want to have sex with the lights off more often than you want to have sex with the lights on. You may not be quite as ready for sex at a moment's notice as you used to be. So your relationships change. You may need a little more foreplay than you once needed. And so that, again, changes the nature of your relationship. Relationships matter, though. And they have to grow with you and you have to grow with them. And it's the relationship with yourself that matters most because look, we spend the most time with ourselves. So as a practical nature, as a practical thought, as a practical fact, you have to have the best relationship with yourself. I got an email or a message during this past week from my last broadcast from somebody who sent me a message that I'm not sure I'm ever going to forget. And it was from this gentleman who said, who told me, look, I'm okay. Love your podcast. I want you to know I'm okay. I'm dying. I'm not dead yet, but I'm okay. And I'm looking forward to my next journey, to the next leg in my journey. And I thought to myself, wow, there's a gentleman who has a wonderful relationship with himself, a relationship that matters, a relationship that gives him the strength he needs to make him know that he'll be okay in whatever happens next. That's a strong relationship that matters. A relationship with yourself matters the most. You need to have faith in yourself. A faith in God, a relationship with God matters too. A relationship in whatever spiritual being or light that brings you comfort and strength matters. Relationships matter because it's what we find strength in. Whether you find strength in yourself, that matters the most. Whether you find strength in the safety of others, that matters the most. Human beings, I think, by their very nature, find comfort in others. But I think as we get older, we also need to depend more on ourselves and our relationship with ourselves. I also want us all to have a relationship that matters with this community, with the not dead yet community. our relationship with one another with this podcast. And I want us to tune in every Sunday night here with this podcast with one another. And because relationships matter. Again, turning to what we've seen happen this past weekend, we don't want to go there. We don't want our relationships to get to the point where we hate one another so badly that we turn into monsters. Our relationships matter. We want to build each other up. We want to find strength in one another. We want to give each other safety and trust and comfort. We're at this stage in our lives where we need one another, where we can become better because of one another. Relationships matter. We're not dead yet. So let's come together and make each other better. That's our podcast for tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being a part of our live studio audience. And I look forward to talking to you next week. Thanks so much. Goodbye. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful week.